Hi guys, this time we're going to be talking about the bearings of the Lotus Elise. Now the Lotus Elise is fitted with 4 equal bearings, and I have one in my hand here, and this is a new one, and we'll fit it later on in the video. And all 4 of them are the same, so it doesn't really matter if it's the front or the back, they're all the same bearings. Now you can't get the bearings as individual elements, but you have to buy them as an assembly, and this is a assembly. Now the Lotus S2 has a speed sensor, and you can see that over here at the back of the car. So only the left rear wheel has the speed sensor. There are no speed sensors anywhere else on the S2. However, the S3 might have them all around the car, especially have ABS. But it doesn't really matter. You can order the wheel bearings with speed sensor for all 4 wheels, even for an S2. Of course, you can't use the wheel sensor or the speed sensor on the S2, but that's okay. Alright, so how do you know that the bearings are gone? Well, typically you will recognize it by a grinding sound that comes from the wheels while you're driving, and the sound will increase, the frequency will increase the faster you go. If you put more forces on the wheel, then the sound will even be louder. So basically, if you drive on a straight road and you take a long left bend, like on the exit on a highway, but make some speed, then you're going to put a lot of pressure and forces on the right hand side of the car, basically on the wheel hub. And then if the bearing is gone, then the sound will increase. It will be louder and louder and louder. And then you know that the bearing is basically having a problem. If you take a right hand turn, a long turn, again the same thing. If the sound increases on the left hand side, because that's where now the forces are on, then you know that bearing is gone as well. If the sound does not increase, if you turn to the right on the left hand side, but the sound disappears, then that basically means that the right hand side wheel is having a problem. So the less stress there is on a wheel or on the bearing, the less sound it will make. Put the car on a stand or jack it up, and then take the wheel on both sides and try to wiggle it. And you should have no play on it. And try a bit in all directions, and you should feel no play whatsoever. If you do feel a play, then you know that the bearing is most likely gone. But be careful that you take a close look where the play is happening. Maybe you have had bad bushes or bad ball joints, so that could also give you the wrong impression. Nevertheless, if you have the sound while you're driving the car, and then you actually have some play on it, then you know the bearings are gone. You can also rotate the wheel, and you should hear no sound whatsoever. It should run very, very smoothly. Now the next thing you can do is actually remove the wheel and then do a manual test. So let's do that. I only placed mine with 2 bolts because this is the demo, otherwise I have to be too long busy with unbolting the wheels, so I already prepared this a bit. There we go. The next thing you want to do is to remove the brake clamp. Now removing the brake clamp is easy. There's a bolt on the top and there's a bolt on the bottom. And you've seen all that before in my other videos when we were changing the discs, so I'm not going to show you all that again. But anyway, it is not that hard to do. So let's undo this. Remember, when you remove the brake clamp or the caliper, you may have to push back the brakes a little bit because they may be stuck behind the rim of the disc. If the disc is worn, hold the clamp with one hand when you remove the last bolt, and then place the clamp on a safe place so you don't stress the flexible brake cable. Alright, so now you have full access to the disc, and you can rotate it by hand, and it should rotate very gently. It should not be jerky like this or quirky. You know, it should move very smoothly, and you shouldn't have any kind of areas where you have to push a bit more or less. It should go very smoothly, and that's another good indication that the bearing is actually alright or not. So if it's a bit quirky or jerky when you move it around, you know, like you can actually feel it, then you know that the bearing is gone. So the next thing we'll do is remove the disc. So you take your key. So here it is, the old bearing, and this is the new bearing. It's exactly the same thing. So now we need to remove the bearing. Remember that the bearing is an assembly and it's held in place with actually 3 bolts. 1, 2, 3. So basically these 3 places. 1, 2, 3. So these are the 3 bolts that are holding the wheel bearing assembly in place, and that need to be undone with a socket 19. Now I actually already undid it once before, so it doesn't take too long. You may have to put quite some force on it when you do it. Some Elises may have in the front a central bolt as well, so that's the other one you would have to remove. Now this one doesn't have it, so I can't show it to you. But anyway, when all the bolts are removed, you can gently knock it out, like so. And here is the bearing. That's the old one. With the old bearing removed, the best thing to do now is to clean up the upright. And just use some sanding paper and clean out the inside until it's nice and smooth. Now I already cleaned this one a little bit before, so that's why I don't spend too much time on it, but you know what I mean. And now the best thing to do is put some copper grease on this, so you can always easily remove the bearing if you have to. So let's take some copper grease. And a little bit on the edges here, not too much. You don't want to have a full coat on it. That should be sufficient. And now the only thing left to do is put the new bearing. And that should go in quite smoothly. And then bolt it back down the same way with the same bolts as you mounted it, as you removed it. Now always make sure that the bolts are intact, so if the bolts are damaged, then you have to replace them. If it doesn't go in all the way from the beginning, so that you may want to pull the bearing assembly in by tightening the bolts one by one, so it's pulling it in nicely. Don't do one side at one time, just go around in a circle and do it. Now torque him down now to the right torque, don't forget that. But I'm not going to show you this because otherwise I have to get the torque spanner. But you need to torque him down to the right torque, and now you're basically done. And feel that. I mean, this feels so different than the old bearing. The next step, put the disc back up. Take the brake clamp, slide it back in place. And bolt it down. Torque the bolts down to the right torque. And see how smoothly that runs. No sound. Whatsoever. And that's it, guys. And there is no sound whatsoever. That's perfect. There should be no play at all. And now basically you're done. The rear wheel is a bit different because there you have to remove the drive shaft first by undoing the uprights at the top, and then remove the drive shaft. But that I'll show you in another video on how to change the bearings on the rear wheels. Now you probably wonder what you need to do about the speed sensor on your Lotus S2. Well, you don't need to do nothing, you can just leave it all in. You can cut it off if you want, but you don't have to. But let me show you what I've done with mine. So here it is, that's the speed sensor. I don't need it on the Lotus Elise S2 because I have no wiring harness to connect it to. It is only at the rear left wheel where I need it for my speed indicator. So I can just pull it out like so. No big deal. And then cut it off. I'm just going to cut off the wires because I don't need none of that. Done. That's how simple it is. So we are all done. It's a piece of cake, isn't it? Replacing a wheel bearing on the Lotus Elise. Wheel bearings, just for your information, run around 80 euros. That's not too expensive, and I think it's worthwhile to change them. I have changed mine because the car has 70,000 kilometers, so I just want to have it in top condition. But then again, I'll leave it up to you to decide if you want to change yours or not, and you've seen how you can diagnose it. In my next video, I will be talking about the replacement of the wheel bearing at the back of the car. It's a little bit different, but then again, it won't be hard either. So I'll see you on my next video. Thank you for viewing.